Today's lesson is going to be on one-step equations. There are two worksheets that go along with one-step equations. The first one has to do with adding and subtracting, and the second one is multiplying and dividing. To start out class, we had an entry, and that asked us to figure out if 1 can of juice can hold 32 ounces, how many ounces are there in 12 cans? So what we would have to do is we'd have to take the 32 ounces from 1 can and multiply it by 12 cans. When you do 32 and you multiply by 12, you get 384 ounces. The next one says Paul typed a 104-page report in 8 hours. So if he did 104 pages in 8 hours, we want to figure out how many he typed in 1 hour. So if we do the division, 104 divided by 8, we get 13. And what that means is he typed 13 pages per hour. In order to solve equations, we must find the inverse operation of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, depending on what type of problem it is. In order to solve an addition equation, we have to use subtraction. In order to solve a subtraction equation, we have to use addition. In order to solve multiplication, we use division, remembering that division could also look like a fraction bar. I'm going to note that so that you know it's not subtraction. And then in order to solve division, we use multiplication. So I just put the little dot there. The level 2 questions for the first worksheet have to do with adding and subtracting. Now, problem A, our goal is to get x by itself. So if you look at the side of the equation that contains x over here, you'll see that something is attached to it. There's a minus 5 attached to it. So in order to clear that, we're going to have to do the opposite. But what we do to one side of the equal sign, we have to do to the other. So I want you to get in the habit of showing your work. This part here equals 0, and I'm going to mark that up there so that I don't have a 0 along with the x. So I still have x left. I'm going to bring that down. I'm going to bring down my equals, and 10 plus 5 gives me 15. Now the great thing about equations is you can always check. So what you do is you take your answer and you plug it into the original equation. So instead of x, I'm going to use 15 minus 5 and check to see that equals 10. And since 15 minus 5 equals 10 and 10 equals 10, we know that we did that problem correctly. Moving on to letter B, you'll see that we have a y. And our goal is always to get that variable by itself. You'll notice there's a 9 connected to that y by addition, so in order to undo that, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to subtract 9 from both sides. The 9 minus 9 is going to be 0, leaving us with y. Bring down our equal sign, and 15 minus 9 is going to give us 6 for our final answer. Best part is we can go through and we can check. Does 6 plus 9 equal 15? Yes, it does. So 15 equals 15. We know we did it right. The next one. There's something that we want to simplify before we even go about solving this problem, and that's what I tell you in class every day that I don't like, and that's when you see the minus, the negative. And when you have a minus, the negative, you want to keep it, change it, flip it. So this problem now becomes m plus 8 equals 14. We could also do that for letter D as well. We could make it a plus 8 equals negative 10. So here we have m plus 8 equals 14. We're checking to see what's connected to our variable, and that's a plus 8. To undo that, we're going to do a minus 8. We have to do it on both sides. We've got 0, bring down our m, bring down our equal sign, and 14 minus 8 gives us 6. I'm going to go through and check. Does 6, I'm going to the original, minus negative 8 equal 14? Remember, we have to keep it, change it, flip it. And 6 plus 8 does equal 14, so we know we got it right. On the next one, we see that there's an 8 attached to our A. In order to undo that, we're going to subtract 8 from each side. This gives us 0. We've got A equals. Now we've got negative 10 minus 8. Think of it this way. You took away 10, and then you took away 8 more. So we took away 18. I'm going to go through and check my answer. Does negative 18 minus negative 8 equal negative 10? We keep it, change it, flip it. They're opposites, so we subtract. 18 minus 8 is 10, and it will be negative because there are more negatives, and it checks out. So that's the part that I like most about one-step equations and two-step equations, is you can always plug in your answer to check to see that you did everything correctly. The level 2 type of questions on the second worksheet have you solving multiplication and division equations. Remember that whenever you see a letter next to a number next to a variable, they're connected by multiplication. So in order to undo multiplication, we have to use division. When we're representing this division, we're going to use it as a fraction bar. So you'll see here that we have 8 connected to x by multiplication. To undo multiplication, we are going to divide. We have to do it to both sides. So if I look here, 8 over 8 should be 1. So I'm going to put a 1 through those. I've got 1x left over, equaling negative 24 divided by 8. A negative divided by a positive is a negative, and 8 goes into 24 3 times. So here's our answer. We're going to go through and check. If we check, 8 times negative 3 does give us negative 24. So we know we have the right answer. The next one, we've got a negative 3 connected to our y by multiplication. To undo that, we're going to divide. What we do to one side, we have to do to the other. Negative 3 over negative 3 is 1, so we've got 1y equaling a negative and a negative is positive, and 12 divided by 3 gives us 4. Go ahead and check. Does negative 3 times 4 give us negative 12? And yes, it does. So we know we got the right answer. The next problem, we see that we have 6 connected to our t. To undo that, we have to divide by 6. 6 over 6 is 1, so we have our t equaling negative 66 divided by 6 is negative 11. We'll check. 6 times negative 11 gives us negative 66, and that is true. So we know we got the right answer. The next one, we divide by 11 on both sides, and m equals 11. If we wanted to check, does 11 times 11, or does 11 squared equal 121? And the answer is yes. So we know we got our answer correct. The next type of problem looks a little bit different, but it's representing, we've got our fraction bar, it's representing division. So in order to undo division, we have to use multiplication. So you always look where your x is. My x is right here, and you'll see what's connected to it. It's connected to a divided by 5. So to undo dividing by 5, we're going to multiply each side by 5. Now when we multiply by 5, remember it's a 5 over 1, we would end up getting, I'm going to write it up top here, we'd end up getting 5x over 5. Remember the 5's can cancel out, and we'd end up with x left over. So what you'll see me doing is you're going to see me canceling these off and just writing the x, knowing that eventually it would be this, and then the 5 over 5 would reduce, and you'd just have your x left over. So I'm going to do the next side. We've got our negative 30 times 5, which is going to give us negative 150. We're going to check over our answer. So does negative 150 divided by 5 equal negative 30? Negative 150 divided by 5 gives us negative 30. Negative 30 does equal negative 30. So we know we got the right answer. Perfect. I'm going to move down to letter K because K is very similar to I. And we're going to see that the 9 is attached to our x by division. In order to undo that division, we're going to multiply on both sides. Remember, I'm going to cancel these out, and the reason I'm canceling it out is because it's like I'm doing 9 over 1 times x over 9, which would end up giving me 9x over 9, and the 9's would end up reducing at that point. So we're just left with x equaling, we've got negative 25 times 9, we get negative 225. To check over our work, we'll do negative 225 divided by 9. And when we do that, we get negative 25. So we know we have the right answer. Now on letter J and letter L, you're going to see that the variable's on the opposite side of the equal sign. That doesn't matter. You're still going to do everything just the same. So for this one, what we want to do is we want to get that m by itself. When you see that there's a fraction next to your variable, first of all, do you see how there's a negative sign? I like to take my negative sign, I make the fraction bar a little bit longer, and I take my negative sign up to the top. I just feel like it looks better when it's just on the top instead of out front. So what we're going to do is we have to get rid of that negative 2/3 on the right hand side. In order to get rid of a fraction, you multiply by its reciprocal. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to multiply this by 3 over negative 2. And if I multiply that side by 3 over negative 2, then I have to multiply this side by 3 over negative 2. On the right hand side, right here, when I multiply that, I get negative 6 over negative 6m. Well, negative 6 over negative 6 is 1, so we have 1m left over on the right hand side. Now in order to multiply 3/2 by 10, I'm going to turn 10 into a fraction. 10 times 3 gives us 30. 2 times 1 gives us 2. So we end up with m equals 30 over 2, or 30 over 2 can simplify down to 15. Again, we can go through, we can check over our work. I'm going to check to see, does 10 equal negative 2 over 3 times 15? Remember, that's like 15 over 1. So does 10 equal negative 30 over 3? And what I notice here is that I get 10 equals negative 10. And it doesn't look right, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to check my original problem to see if I made any mistakes. And you'll see that over here I multiplied by 3 over negative 2. Over here I only multiplied by 3 over positive 2. So I need to go correct that mistake. That would give me 30 over negative 2, or negative 15. So when I go back, this should be negative 15, and we end up getting the correct answer. There we go. So when we go to the next one, letter L, we're going to have to multiply by the reciprocal because we see a fraction next to our variable. So in this case, the reciprocal would be 8 over negative 7. So over here, I'm going to multiply by 8 over negative 7. On the right-hand side, we'd end up with negative 56 over negative 56m. Well, negative 56 over negative 56 is 1, so we end up with 1m. Over here, I'm going to do this. And we've got to multiply 8 times 14. We get 112. And negative 7 times 1 is negative 7. When we do negative 112 divided by negative 7, we get negative 16 for m. I'm going to go back. I'm going to check over my answer. So I've got 14 should equal negative 7/8 times negative 16. I'm going to make it negative 16 over 1. So negative 7 times negative 16 is going to give me 112. And 112 divided by 8 gives me 14. So I know that I have the correct answer. Level 3 question is just going to add in fractions and decimals, but we do everything just the same. So here we have addition and subtraction problems. On number A, or letter A, we have A being connected, or X being connected to a minus 6.5. To undo that, we're going to add 6.5. So we have X left over here. Negative 9.3 plus 6.5 is going to leave us with negative 2.8. We'll check our answer. Negative 2.8 minus 6.5, or plus a negative 6.5. I'm going to check. Negative 2.8 plus negative 6.5, and we get negative 9.3. So we know we have the right answer. Moving on. The next one, we see w plus negative 1.43 plus w equals 0.89. In order to undo this negative 1.43, we're going to have to do the opposite. We're going to have to do a plus 1.43. Because we always want to get rid of whatever's next to our w. And in this case, the only way to get rid of that negative is to add it. And in this case, we'd get 0. We get w equals, we're going to do 0.89 plus 1.43, and we get 2.32. So I'm going to check, does negative 1.43 plus 2.32 equal 0.89? I'm going to check, negative 1.43 plus 2.32, and I get 0.89. So we know we have the right answer. The next problem, we have m minus 5/8 equals 3/8. In order to do this one, we've got minus 5/8 connected, so we have to undo that by adding 5/8. Here we have 0, and m equals 3/8 plus 5/8 is 8/8 or 1. So if I checked over my work, we have 8/8 minus 5/8 equaling 3/8, which is true. Letter D is not as simple because the fractions that we have don't have common denominators, but we're going to do it just the same as we would any other type of problem. We've got 2/12 connected to our y, so to undo that, we've got to subtract them. So I'm going to do it off to the side, we're doing 5/9 minus 2/12. So we have to find the common denominator between 9 and 12, and that common denominator is going to be 36. So I'm going to set up my subtraction problem. We've multiplied by 4, so we have 20/36 minus 6/36, and we're going to get 14/36, which simplifies down to 7/18. So we get 7/18 equaling y. Can go back and check our answer. We're going to do 5/9 equals 7/18 plus 2/12. We're going to get our common denominator, so it was 36. We'll use 20/36 equaling 14/36 plus 6/36. 14/36 plus 6/36 does equal 20/36, so we know we have the right answer. We can do the same thing with multiplication and division of decimals and fractions. So here we have 1.3x, and the 1.3 is connected by multiplication. To undo that, we do division, and this equals 1, so x equals 8 divided by 1.3 gives us, I'm going to make this a squiggly, because it ends up giving us a decimal of approximately 6.15. Now it's not exact, which is why I didn't use an actual equal sign. If I go back in and I do 1.3 times 6.15, I get 7.995, which is very close to 8. Since I rounded, I know that is true. The next one, we've got a negative 4.6 connected to our y. To undo that, we have to divide. We get 1. Y equals 9.2 divided by negative 4.6. We get negative 2. If I wanted to check my answer, does negative 4.6 times negative 2 equal 9.2? And yes, it does. A negative and a negative gives us a positive. It checks out. Now you'll notice on the next two, we have a fraction connected to our variable. In order to undo that fraction, we are going to multiply by the reciprocal. So here we have to multiply by 3/1 on both sides. Remember this, the 3's would cancel out, the 1's would cancel out. We'd end up with 3/3y, which 3/3 is 1. So we get y equals 8 times 3, is 24. 9 times 1 is 9. 9 goes into 24 2 times with 6 left over, or 2 2/3. The next one, we have to multiply by the reciprocal, so we're going to multiply by 2 over negative 3. I'm going to do the same over here, 2 over negative 3. These cancel out. We're left with k equals, I've got negative 27 times 2, which is negative 54, over 4 times negative 3, which is negative 12. We have negative and a negative is a positive. 12 goes into 54 4 times. That gives us 48, with 6 left over, which is 4.5. The level 4 questions, you have to come up with the problem. So here it says 6 times a number. Since we know we have our 6, we can translate this into math language. So 6 times a number, if we don't know the number, we'll call it n, means equals negative 96. Find the number. So another way to write this would be 6n equals negative 96. Since the 6 is connected to the n by multiplication, we undo that using division. We'll divide by 6 on both sides, and negative 96 divided by 6 is going to give us negative 16. So n equals negative 16. We're going to try it. Does 6 times negative 16 equal negative 96? And it does. 1/4 of a number. We've got 1/4 of means multiplication. A number, since we don't know that number, we're going to call it n, equals, is equals, negative 9. Now we've got that fraction, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, 4 over 1. They cancel off here. We're left with n equals negative 36 over 1, or just negative 36. We're going to check, does 1/4 times negative 36 equal negative 9? We end up with negative 36 over 4, which is negative 9. So we know we have the right answer. Here we go. Here we have some addition and subtraction ones. So 23 minus a number, we don't know that number, equals 42. Find the number. So in order to get rid of this 23, we're going to subtract 23 from each side. But be careful, because we don't just have an n left. We have a minus n equals, and 42 minus 23 is going to give us 19. Now, if there's no number in front of n, you just have that negative. It's assumed we've got a negative 1n equaling 19. So we actually have to divide by negative 1. And we get n equals negative 19. So there's our final answer. If we did 23 minus negative 19, we'd get 42. Add the opposite, we do get 42, and it checks out. A number increased by plus negative 45 equals 77. In order to get rid of that negative 45, we're going to add 45. So n equals 77 plus 45, 122. We're going to check. Does 122 plus negative 45 equal 77? 122 plus negative 45 does indeed equal 77, so we know we have the right answer. After completing this lesson, you'll want to make sure you complete both worksheets. Both worksheets are in eBackpack, and if you have any questions, please let me know.